All right, here he is from Kansas City.
He's still studying, too.
He's
Look
still
at him.
studying. He's got two more rounds coming up tonight. What's up, Klatt? What is
Not
that
much.
your
How are you guys doing?
Is
What's
that your
going
best
on?
available at every
what an
position?
Exciting event.
Yeah, it was. It got really exciting starting with pick 2 because there was all this smoke about C.J. Stroud, and then the Texans, who we were told yesterday were one of the teams that did not subscribe to that S2 test. They're like, hey, no smoke here, man. We're going with our guy number 2. You saw a ton of C.J. Stroud. I mean, you guys do a lot of Ohio State games. Did you like that pick there?
I did. I mean, he was so clearly the second best quarterback to Bryce Young, for me. I've said throughout the entire process that there was 2 really good players at quarterback, and then there was a pretty substantial drop. And it just so happened that the third quarterback I really liked and thought was going to be a top 10 player just because his upside was so high. Speaking of Anthony Richardson, everybody else, and I mean, I feel really bad for Will Levis, but he kind of got caught up in draft hype more than anything else. Because, well, I mean, you didn't ask about Levis. Yes, I thought Stroud was really good. I did see him 8 times. And this is one of the things that the S2 never made sense to me, is that it was trying to get me to lie to myself. It's like, hey, what you saw, you didn't really see. He didn't really process information as well as you saw. He didn't really, choose the correct trajectory and tempo of ball placement and things of that nature as well as he did. He's a really good player. You guys saw that when he played Georgia. You've seen that throughout his entire career. And, I think that they got it right, and they swung big. They had so much draft capital. And those 2 guys up at the top of the draft, they've got to feel so good about what they did. Just so happened that the Eagles said, hold my beer.
Yeah. We'll get to the Eagles in a second. I will ask you about Will Levis because, Klatt, it was about a year ago when we first saw him pop up on a mock draft in the top 10, and we were like, what is going on? And then we watched him this year, and it was the same Will Levis, a solid quarterback who, he's a big physical athletic guy, but it just doesn't pop. He doesn't look the part of a franchise quarterback. And I said this last night on our draft special. Like, everybody's got him in the top 5 or top 10, but nobody can really explain why. And nobody out there is saying they really want him. And that proved to be true.
So it's like the perfect storm of things that kind of hit. Number one is that it wasn't a super deep draft for quarterbacks. Okay, so we can all agree on that. Okay, so that's going to create a little bit of hype for guys that maybe shouldn't. Okay, then there's the next factor of, like, physically he's very gifted. The ball does pop out. He does make big throws, and it looks different than some of these other quarterbacks in college football. And so, you sit there and you're like, man, I mean, there's something there. Then the next thing, and I think this is probably the most impactful, you can't really say anything. There's no red flags off the field, right? He's a great leader. He comes in, he goes to work, he loves football, comes from a good family. Every teammate really likes him, works hard in the weight room. Like, he's Nick Saban, guys, I'm sure he's done this on your show, but he talks about the draft process being you're either an and or a but player. You either go through the evaluation process, and then the guy giving the dissertation to the whole organization says, hey, Will Levis, he's got a strong arm, maybe, lacks some accuracy here and there. And he gives the whole, and then he says, and he's a great leader. He's a terrific kid. Coaches love him. Or you're a but player. Gives the whole same evaluation. And then he says, but he's had problems off the field. Strength coaches say it's hard to get him in the weight room, so on and so forth. So he's the type of guy that is an and player. And so because of that, when you get into the last month of this draft process, and you're a guy like me or any of us covering the draft, and you start talking to teams, and and inevitably at some point you're just like, do you like Levis? Do you know what you always hear? Yeah, we love Levis. Like, we really like Levis. And so you think to yourself, like, oh, okay, well, like, they really like Levis. They could be in the Levis sweepstakes. So it's this it's this perfect storm of things that happen that create a buzz for a player that probably shouldn't have had that buzz in the first place. Because listen, I'm with you guys. When he popped up on those lists to begin the season, I was like, hold on a second. The guy that couldn't beat Sean Clifford and eats bananas with the peels on?
Exactly.
Like that, so, and last thing I'll say is that, like, I hope he has a lot of success. We've seen guys slip and have success, and so hopefully he does. But when I watched his game, there were some major flaws in his game, in particular when you're talking about the timing which he throws, the anticipatory nature or lack thereof that he plays with, and then his lack of understanding in terms of pitch selection. Like there's so many times when the touch and the tempo and the pace of his throw is just not what's needed. So all of those things need to improve at the next level. And I feel bad for him because I don't wish last night on anybody in terms of what happened to Will Levis.
Well, I think his girlfriend would love the fact if he goes to my Rams with the 36th pick tonight. But I'm scared to death, Joel, because Pittsburgh's not taking a quarterback. Arizona's not taking one. Detroit doubtfully is taking one. Indy's not taking one. But I had heard the Rams were thinking about trading back into the first last night to get Hendon Hooker if he was still there. So it looks like they're looking quarterback. I honestly would rather have Hendon Hooker than Will Levis. I don't want a quarterback in this draft, but do you think the Rams would grab Will Levis right there at 36?
No, you were accurate. They were talking about trading back in, but it wasn't for Levis. It was actually, if they needed a suitor, they really wanted Jordan Addison. And that's who they were targeting and couldn't get a trade executed because there was those run on wide receivers.
And that's what I want. I want a receiver. I would take Jalen Hyatt. I'd take Mingo. I mean, there's some guys out there that are still really good
Mingo's
players.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you on that. And I think those are the next two guys, at least on my board. Mims, it might be a little rich for that place in the draft, but he's a good player as well. Downs from UNC. I really like Downs. And I think in the third round, watch out for the Rams to get a guy like Charlie Jones from Purdue, who was highly productive in this last year. I forget your question. Oh, Hendon Hooker. I'm not convinced. Well, I don't think you can really. Well, let's just put it this way. I think Hooker might be the next quarterback taken. When push comes to shove and you've got to put the pick in, I think that Hooker's film is more impressive. You got to get over the ACL injury, but I'm not convinced that Levis is even going to be the next quarterback taken because of what I've heard from some of those teams that you mentioned that are upcoming.
I was watching. Joel Klatt is with us from Kansas City. He was on the NFL Network last night. They did tremendous work. I watched you guys exclusively, Klatt, because I love you.
Thank you, bud.
I know that means a lot to you. I'm the one. I love you. I love DJ. You guys are good friends. But I can't remember which of you said it. It might have even been Charles. But when Anthony Richardson was selected by the Colts, one of you made the point, look, Jonathan Taylor's the best running back in the NFL. This helps him because Richardson's such a mobile guy. He holds the edges. This will improve their run game even more.
That was me.
All right. Great point by you.
Yeah. Thank you. I see it time and time again. Listen, those of us that live in the college space, like all of us do, we know that, right? The NFL, those guys still don't quite, they just kind of think of guys that are mobile and then, guys that are not. And they don't quite think about what it does to the run game. I mean, think of why Atlanta rushed the ball for as well as they rushed the ball. Chicago, all these rushing statistics that we see in the NFL. And then people are just, I think, a little slower on the uptake on the NFL side to understand what that guy means outside of just his own production, right? That's not what I was totally talking about. But yeah, that's a team that could be dangerous. And then the other point that I made about Richardson is the fact that he's in the Trey Lance vein in terms of inexperience, okay? And I'm not suggesting he's going to have a Trey Lance career arc, but he needs to play. He's only, started those 13 games. And I've done this thing here. Hold on. I got to bring it up because I want accurate numbers here. I'm going to get the notebook out. Notebook is serious.
Wow, look at that thing.
Okay, so if you take a look at the 11 quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls in the last 20 years, here's what you get when you look at their college career. This is always fascinating to me. It's like, and Mike Martz alluded to this to me at one point, and so I went back and I checked it out, and it's you can prove it. Those 11 quarterbacks, on average, started 34 games, attempted 1,200 passes and 70 touchdowns in their college careers. In fact, the least experienced college quarterback of the 11 Super Bowl winners of the last 20 years is Tom Brady. He was 20-5 as a starter at Michigan and attempted just under 700 passes. The next most inexperienced quarterback in the college ranks of the 11 Super Bowl winners in the last 20 years is Aaron Rodgers, but that's discounting his reps at the junior college level. So it's very rare to find a guy that can have top-end NFL success that hasn't played a lot of football at the college level. It's a reps business. It's a reps position. You've got to go out there and get the reps. It's a Gladwellian-style position in which there's kind of the 10,000-hour rule. You just got to do it. So for me, Richardson needs to play more than anything. He didn't attempt 400 passes in college. Well, how do you put him on the field maybe before he's ready as a passer? Well, you do things like hold the edges and create more run game opportunity for Jonathan Taylor and look for ways to move the football that are non-traditional. Very similar to what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts when he was early in his career, and obviously that's worked out.
When you were talking about the Texans, I think you said it best. Philadelphia said, hold my beer. They get Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, 2 more Georgia Bulldogs. It's ridiculous. And I know that you were a Broncos fan, but now it's projected they're going to have 10 SEC starters on both sides of the ball. So the rich get richer, and this Eagles team, I mean, my gosh, when you look at the NFC is loaded with quarterbacks. The NFC, they were already in the Super Bowl last year, and they've obviously got to be the favorite this year with those additions.
Okay, so my losers of the entire night were obviously Will Levis. That was tragic. And then Dallas. Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, aren't you just, like, pulling your hair out? Because they look like they're going to be the best defense in football with the highest paid quarterback, which is wild. Like, you don't normally get that. Normally, you're trying to build a defense. Like, remember, guys, Seattle won a championship based on a defense. Tampa, in part, played so well defensively, although Brady was still so good. Denver won a defense based on a championship when Manning could barely throw a ball through a wet paper bag. And now Philly, they don't have to choose whether it's like, well, is it our quarterback or is it our defense? It's going to be both. Like, they've got a guy that was in the running for the MVP, and they're going to have the best defense in football. It is wild. Each one of those picks, when they came up, I was like, oh, man, I can't believe the Eagles are going to get Jalen Carter. And then later, and we spent, I don't know, Brownie, 5 minutes on it. We were just like, no way. Like, this is not happening. Nolan Smith is not going to the Philadelphia Eagles. And by the way, is there a better team to emulate? I guess emulate might be the wrong word. To build off of, I mean, it makes me think of like a great chef. Sometimes chefs will say, like, I'm only as good as the ingredients I work with. And a lot of times it matters where they go and get those ingredients. Well, if you're an NFL team and you look at what's gone on in college football over the last couple of years, why don't you get an apartment in Athens? Because they've got good players. I've been told.
Nolan Smith going 30. If he doesn't tear that pec, he's a top 10 guy, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's almost like people forgot. I think people forgot about Jackson Smith and Jigba.
He's a complete steal.
There are things in the NFL draft that I sometimes just don't understand. Nolan Smith going where he did, and frankly, Jackson Smith and Jigba going where he did. Like, I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can have a lot of football acumen, watch the tape, and assuming you're watching 2021 or when these guys are healthy, and then say, like, we're going to go in a different direction.
Is the same house band back tonight? House band was they were loud,
Bro.
Klatt. Man, I mean, were they on the stage with you? Were they literally on your stage, or were they elsewhere?
No. We weren't even like we were set back a little ways, and it was still wild. I mean, I will say, like, it's no longer all that conducive for like a true set, a television set, because it's literally Woodstock. Like, there were hundreds of thousands of people there. And so those speakers have to like reach, a long distance. So if anyone's been to a music festival, you kind of understand how loud it is near the stage versus where you're at, like at the back of the crowd. And that's what it was like, man. But listen, you fight through. I thought it was really fun. It was a really fun night.
Yeah, y'all were really good too. 7 o'clock tonight,
Thanks,
ESPN, also on the NFL Network. You can see Klatt on the NFL Network, huh?
I thought that you guys were going to at least ask about this, and I'm not suggesting anything. I did find it interesting. This was one of the more balanced first rounds as far as college conference in a number of years. Not in the top 10. The SEC dominated, and of course they would.
Yeah, but only nine first round picks.
9-9 with the Big Ten, yeah.
Yes, and the Big Ten had 9. I thought that was interesting. Even the Big 12 had 6. ACC had 4. Pac-12 had 3. So it was a more distributed draft than we've seen in a long time. Maybe we're going to get that a little bit more and more. I don't know. Not after seeing last year's recruiting. What was it? Big Ten had 1 5-star, and the SEC had like 1,087 or something along those lines.
Hey, one other thing, Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm a big fan. I don't know why Detroit would trade up when you've already got Swift. You just went out and got David Montgomery. It didn't make sense.
I didn't understand
Detroit's they've got so much momentum. And this is a team that can legitimately win the NFC North this year. And there's other pieces they could have added. It just didn't make a lot of sense.
I'm with you. I thought that leaving Kalijah Kancey on the board at 18 for the Bucs to take him at 19 was interesting. I like Jack Campbell, I really do. But that seemed... And then the Gibbs, I love Gibbs. I'm not going to sit here and bash Gibbs because this guy, like, you talk about the modern running back and what you want. However, that team at that spot, I didn't love that pick. And I think both can be true. I feel like they think that they've got some luxury with their picks, but man, with where they were sitting, I thought that they had a chance. Think about this. They had a chance to go, if you wanted to go splash offense and get really good on defense, this is what they could have gotten. Stand pat at 6 and take Jalen Carter. They need it, right? Their defense needs it. Stand pat at 18 and select Jackson Smith-Njigba. Best wide receiver in the draft. Still have 2 picks in the second round in the top 55. So Detroit, I didn't love. You look at what they passed up for what they got, and to your point, I wasn't thrilled.
Man, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams when he comes back, and Smith-Njigba, boy.
That would have been a luxury pick. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to go luxury offense, like they
I'm
seem
saying
to
that
have
would be
done with
incredible.
Gibbs.
I don't think you can have too many good receivers.
Well, some people think that you can, obviously. I don't know.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. See him tonight, NFL Network, 7 o'clock. Thank you, Klatt. Enjoy the next 2 rounds here.
You bet. By the way, like, you're the only ones I'm going on with.
Oh, man.
Tired. I got a bunch of texts, and I was like, no, I'm going to go on with the boys.
Hey, I love how organized you are.
Our guy.
You've made your bed in your own hotel room, haven't you?
Yep.
I did.
That's incredible.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well done.
Pulled the sheets up.
Yep.
All right, boys.
All right. Love you,
See you,
man.
Love you.
See you. That is Klatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.